Let's get it. I am excited about this video. Somebody sent it in the comments. Somebody else had told me about the channel. I've been waiting for somebody to really break it down. I told you we haven't covered the paperwork because there's too many paperworks out there, and I don't know which paperwork is the legit paperwork, and everybody calling the real one fake, the fake one real. Who knows? But shout out to Pierre Rausini. He went and he did it himself. The question is, was I wrong? Now, I've always told y'all, I am always open to new information, clarifying things for me and telling me when I was wrong. And I'm not one of those guys that's going to just fight to the death to try to be right, right? If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. Everybody has an agenda and a side. As far as I'm concerned, I try to keep it non-biased, down the middle. I don't give a I don't have a dog in the fight. You know what I'm saying? I could give a shit what 50 or Big Meech go through. Neither one of them motherfuckers put money in my pocket. So I just want the truth. I just want to know the story. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I don't have a dog in the fight. And here's the thing. Neither does Pete Rausini. Neither, he don't give a shit. He's just in line of looking for the truth. That's it. That's all I want. I just want to find the truth. If it sounds funny to me, I'm going to call bullshit. Official Primo, the Black Hand of the Sinaloa cartel, he mad because his shit just don't sound real to me. He think it's because of Jay. That's y'all shit. My shit is my shit. My opinion is my opinion. I don't believe you. You can say what you want. You can talk all the tough shit you want. Doesn't make me believe you. You could believe all the tough shit you say. Doesn't make me believe you. Same thing with that FBI agent chick. FBI agent chick, I don't believe a fucking word she got to say. Nothing. Not a little bit. Nada. I don't believe nothing. I believe she shit. She probably worked at the lunch counter, in a government building or some shit. That's how I feel, right? Change my mind. I give Primo, her, every other liar that I think is a liar on the internet, I give you every opportunity to change my mind. If you can't change my mind, you want from me, right? So I feel the same way with this guy, Pete Rausini. He has no dog in the race. He doesn't care. He's just here to break down what he sees as the facts. He's not going to sugarcoat the shit, right? Well, what the truth is in his interpretation of the paperwork. I don't know what paperwork he looked at. Sometimes we do paperwork parties. I like doing paperwork parties where I know where I'm getting this information from. Everybody's, you can make FOIA requests. It's hard enough just running this channel. If you want to get me a piece of information, get me the piece of information. Otherwise, I'm going to wait for somebody smarter than me, like Pete. All right? And salutes to Pete, because I hear whispers out there in these cartel YouTube streets that, he watches the show every now and then. He checks in, so salutes to Pete. I want somebody smart like Pete to break that shit down and to watch that shit. So that's why we're here, to have somebody smarter than me break down the paperwork and tell me what I don't know.
He said, according to the DOJ, there was 100 to 150 keys every 10 days.
On the cartel level, that is peanuts. That is nothing.
150 is not a lot of product. And so what is characterized as large scale is large scale by American standards, not by the guys that are bringing in 12 to 15 to 20 metric tons every 3 to 4 weeks. They're moving 20,000 units. There was one guy in LA who in 2 months sold more product than BMF did in 13 years.
Shout out Crime and Entertainment. Matter of fact, let's give him a sub. Let's give him a like. And let's share his channel. This is dope that we got I always want the other side of the coin. I want the other side of the story. Always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. Pete, we very rarely cover the same subject on our podcast. A lot of our podcast is, centered around your background, but you and I done a show on the Big Meech situation involving he and 50 Cent, where people were saying that he cooperated. I thought we laid out a very good episode kind of detailing why that was kind of false, and there was a lot of holes in the narratives that were being shopped around. But there was still a lot of questions in the comments that maybe people still don't get. So we're going to come back for a round 2 to break down why Meech got out as early as he did, why there was no basis or no sort of proof, documented or otherwise, that he cooperated, and a few other things. But first, one of the questions that we seen was, who is this guy? How does he know all this? Give the audience just a brief breakdown of why you're so, you have such a knowledge on the subject matter.
Well, I spent over 2 decades in federal prison. And during that time period, I spent a significant amount of my time not only litigating my own case, but the way I kept my sanity was I was involved in preparing claims on behalf of other prisoners. And I've obtained easily well over 100 sentence reductions for men utilizing the same amendments.
Pierre is the quintessential guy in the prison movie that is in the law library, runs the law library, stay in the law library, helping out other inmates. He knows his shit. He said he's gotten reductions for hundreds of inmates just using opportunities and things that are legal to get these things done for these guys. So he knows his shit in that sense.
Out of that, over 100 sentence reductions for men. The way I kept my sanity was I was involved in preparing claims on behalf of other prisoners. And I've obtained easily well over 100 sentence reductions for men utilizing the same amendments that Big Meech did to obtain their relief. Like, this is nothing out of the ordinary. In 2014, Amendment 792 was passed. 46,000 federal prisoners got relief under that amendment.
And who passed that?
The Sentencing Commission. See, in 1987, the federal system changed in that parole was abolished. The Federal Sentencing Commission was put in place, and they promulgated a set of guidelines, which at the time were mandatory and guided the discretion of the judge. And so for a man like Meech, and we have a copy of the sentencing guideline table, I understand you're going to put it up for the viewers.
Yes.
Meech falls under what's referred to as criminal history category 2, and he had a level 42. And so a level 42 offender with the criminal history category 2 results in a sentencing range of 360 to life. Mm-hmm. So Meech received the low end of the applicable guideline range. That meant there was no cooperation at the earlier sentencing, at his first sentencing.
Right. Him and Southwest, his brother Southwest, and they essentially, and people have a misconception about taking a plea deal. Taking a plea deal does not mean you cooperated. Taking a plea deal just means you avoided going to trial and could have possibly gotten life without parole, or, depending on the circumstances, it could be many different variations. But if you take that plea deal, you're pleading guilty, you're avoiding going to trial, and in most cases, you're guaranteeing yourself either maybe a shot at parole in the future, or in some cases, avoiding the death penalty. There's a lot of...
And that's what's wrong with the streets, that the streets wants to lump everything up together. You know what I'm saying? Everything is the same thing. Oh, if you cop the plea, use a snitch. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what? All I did was plead guilty. That's all I did. Well, you told the police you was guilty. You snitched on yourself. Shut your stupid ass up, man. Sit down somewhere. All right? No mamas. No mommies, wait.
Or in some cases, avoiding the death penalty. There's a lot of different reasons to take a plea deal.
Well, there's no parole in the federal system. That was abolished in conjunction with the sentencing guidelines that got passed. However, Meech's range was from 360 to life.
No parole in the federal system, which is crazy.
And the reason why he got the 360, Meech's range was from 360 to life. And the reason why he got the 360 to 30 years, 360 months.
Right.
The reason why he gets the 360 is the judge gave him consideration because he took the plea. Otherwise, he'd have gotten on the life.
Right, and that's essential.
So he got the low end of what his applicable sentencing should have been. And it's because he took the plea. Had he not taken that plea, they'd have been like life sentence. You stay here until you go to the upper room.
Essentially, like I said, why they take the plea, because at least you have a chance. Might be 30 years, but at least you got a chance.
Well, yes, and also you have to understand that the government's, the weight of the prosecution was primarily on his brother.
Yes.
And so he had brought a challenge earlier on to try to get the case severed. And the way the government deals with that is they're saying, well, look, let's wait for the evidence to come in at trial. And if it creates a controversy or a conflict between both defendants, where essentially there's two prosecutors attacking Southwest's case, then there's going to be a severance, which meant the government's going to have to present the entire case all over again, which is a 3 or 4 month trial. They're not going to subject the judge to tie up a court for 6 to 8 months relitigating the same case. So at that point, the judge is already encouraging the parties to find a reasonable settlement.
Yeah.
So again, Meech asked early to have his brother separated from the trial. Same thing they did to Tupac. You know what I'm saying? Same thing they did to Pac. They separated themselves from his trial. So Meech tried to get a separation from Terry. And the courts was like, let's make sure that this has to be separated before we start separating shit and holding up the court. Now, the relationship, for those that do not know, between Southwest T and Big Meech, his brother, is not something sweet. They've had their problems, right? For those that don't know, BMF broke into two different sections, right? The two sections, one was Meech's and one was Southwest T's, and you know, they did what they did. Again, they were like they are now. They were like the Dipset. Everybody reps from their proper position wherever they at, but we ain't together, right? So much to the point that there is a rumored conversation where Southwest T tells his own mother that he might have to take out his brother Meech. So the relationship between the two is not a sweet situation. I just want to clarify that while he's speaking on separating the cases, and how that was an early challenge, an early petition was to separate the case between Big Meech and Southwest T.
Meech refused to have a court for 6 to 8 months relitigating the same case. So at that point, the judge was already encouraging the parties to find a reasonable settlement.
Yeah.
Since Meech refused to cooperate, he couldn't get below the 30. So people keep sending in the comments, what about the 5K1 letter? There was never any 5K letter. In order for him to go below the 30, they would have had to have filed a 5K1 letter. Since he never went below the 30, it's completely irrelevant.
Pete is making very clear, because he didn't go down below the 360, the 30 years, that's proof positive, and the fact that there was no 5K1 letter, that is proof positive that Big Meech did not speak early at his first sentencing. All right? That lets you know, supposedly he took the hit, and that was his hit. The hit was 30 years, and that was him. That's where he laid on the guideline. That's where he landed.
In order for him to go below the 30, they would have had to have filed a 5K1 letter. Since he never went below the 30, it's completely irrelevant.
And that ought to speak right there volumes to his loyalty, because like you said, the case was primarily based on his brother. Had he separated that and fought it on his own, he very likely could have won, but then you're hanging your brother out to dry to hold the bag for something that he was very much involved with. We're not saying that he wasn't doing what he was accused of, but he knew if he took that, then they both got the same deal and nobody was hanging another one out to dry.
I mean, look, it was a reasonable settlement given the weight of the government's evidence. Because even if you remove the wiretaps, I'm sure they had a whole bunch of people lined up to testify against these guys. Oh, yeah. And so at that particular circumstance, you know, the 30 was the best they were going to possibly do. And keep in mind, he was still a relatively younger guy. You know, you think he got knocked off when he was like 37 years old?
Yeah.
And so in the federal system, you don't do 30, you do 85%. So that means he's going to get down somewhere in the neighborhood of 25, 24. Then you take a year off for halfway house. Then you take a year off for drug program. So you start looking at, okay, well, no one wants to do the 23 or 24 years. But on the other hand, it's not a 30 piece, meaning day for day.
And then here's the thing. Again, the streets lump everything up. He got out early. Most people get out early. Most. He just named 30, 40 different ways. You know, good time, you know, programs, this, that, changes in the system. These things happen. So, yeah, the streets got to cut the shit. Stop lumping shit together. Because I always hear, well, if somebody got out early, there's a reason they got out early. Yeah, it's called good time. Yeah, it's called this. It's called this program. It's called getting my GED. It's called this, credits towards that. Whatever it is, it ain't always telling. How many people get a false jacket dropped on them on a daily basis? That's what he's trying to clear up here. Right? Because we all looking at it like, there's something strange about this Tammy Cowan's Big Meech shit. But we not sitting down and really, this guy took time out of his day to break that shit down. Nate Money said he told. Because you said so? Are you even listening to what dude's going to say? Or is your mind made up already? That's my point. I'm not one of those people. I'm one of those dudes that if I'm blessed with new information, then I make new, those are new thoughts. Those are new ideas, new understandings, different perspectives. I don't understand you people that just pick a side. You know what that tells me? You might not be smart enough to differentiate the two. You might just want to flip a coin every day. And that's how you pick your politics, your meal, your everything. That's on you. That's not me. I want to know. So shout out Peter for bringing it.
And so, when we had our last conversation, we were actually planning on speaking about the disarticulation of the Sinaloa cartel as of last summer, when this whole situation with Big Meech popped up. And I hadn't had an opportunity to review the documents, which is why I kind of had to qualify my statements and just reason from first principles. But now I've had an opportunity, after we spoke last time, to go and pull all the documents. I've had an opportunity to read the transcripts, analyze the orders, and quite frankly, I have no indication whatsoever that Big Meech cooperated.
That's a lot.
He says that shit unequivocally, and he don't seem like a dude that just talk for the sake of talking. Hit the like button if you have yet to do so. He don't seem like a dude that's just gonna sit there and put his name on the line, because the man does a lot of videos a lot of interviews on the internet. Put his name on the line and just be like, go against what everybody else is talking about and say, I don't see any reason that tells me that this actually happened and that he actually did this.
Quite frankly, I have no indication whatsoever that Big Meech cooperated.
That's a lot in the comments. That's what you see, because I don't think the masses understand the way charges are, the way the guidelines were, and why you can get time off. And a lot of people don't even realize that he's not free. Currently, he's out, but he's not free. He's in a halfway house, right?
He is in prison until next January. The last year of your sentence, prior to the First Step Act, was served at home. It's called community confinement. You do part of it at the halfway house, then you transition to home confinement. He received an extended halfway house placement because of the First Step Act. So he has more than 1 year, plus he got an additional year taken off under the FSA. So, of course, these weren't factors that contemplated his decision-making back in 2008, because none of this had happened yet.
And let me say something. I'm guilty of that, too. Some of us are, too, and when we have these conversations. Guilty of forgetting that the man is still on papers. Guilty of forgetting that the man still has to answer to somebody. Guilty, I didn't think about the whole, he ain't going to be at that concert shit until 50 said it. Then it dawned on me, yeah, dummy, he's on home confinement, unless he got permission or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just here to say that I feel like I'm guilty as well of forgetting that he's not just free to say and do as he pleases right now.
People keep thinking the FSA Act, and who did that? Was that Trump?
That was Trump who signed that into law in December of 2018.
So people keep confusing the FSA Act that Trump signed in as to why he got that sentence reduction to begin with, but that's not even the case. Am I correct? That was the guidelines that was being.
He received 2 sentence reductions. Well, he received technically 2 modifications of his sentences under the sentencing guidelines. Mm-hmm. Then he received a 3rd year off, a 3rd reduction resulting in 1 year off under the First Step Act, and extended halfway house placement, mm-hmm. which is why he ended up with a 16-month placement. They actually shorted him. He's in a circumstance so similar to mine. I'm owed 15 months. And so absent the FSA, I wouldn't have gotten released until next month.
Right.
Whereas I signed my halfway house papers in January of 23.
He's very what's the word? He tries to be precise with his words. He said he got a reduction, then he corrected himself and said no, modification at first. The guy's on the shit. All I heard from everybody else is screaming and fucking yelling and jokes and shit.
And so there was an extended period because of the FSA credits towards application on the halfway house. So he's already gotten a benefit larger than the 1 year. And so everything is consistent with a non-cooperation resolution. And what people fail to appreciate is when Meech or Demetrius Flenory, because I don't know the man personally, but Flenory was perceived of as the largest African-American trafficker in the United States. They're not going to give a trafficker at that level a time cut because somebody a fraction of his size gets knocked off. John Gotti doesn't get a time cut for giving up the driver.
Yeah.
What are we even talking about here? Cuffy got charged literally in February 2013, the first transaction, which is, where's the date? I got it right here for you. The early transaction is the February 5th through February 7th transaction. It's 2 kilos. It's 2 rat-ass kilos.
2 rat-ass kilos.
You're not giving a drug kingpin a...
Go get your fucking shine.
Go home and get your fucking shine box.
He said 2 rat-ass kilos.
Sentence 2 kilos. It's 2 rat-ass kilos.
So that's what Cuffy got popped off. 2 keys.
It's 2 rat-ass kilos. You're not giving a drug kingpin a sentence reduction because some guy got knocked off with 2 keys that he didn't even pay for. It was a reverse thing. He got it on the cuff from the cops. So he received no money, no assets. They set the guy up with their own product. And you think they're going to give the biggest African-American drug trafficker a sentence reduction because some guy got knocked off with 2 rat-ass keys?
Yeah,
Go home and get your fucking
and then
shine
10
box.
days later, the second reverse sting, because after the authorities busted Cuffy's driver with the 2 keys that the authorities had set him up with, the authorities then go to Cuffy and say, hey, you owe us for those 2 keys. He didn't have the money to pay for it. So then he was able to persuade them to say, okay, well, you know what? We'll sell you another 15 keys. Like, who does this? Nobody in the actual trafficking world does this silliness. The guy's already told you he can't pay for the 2. Why is anybody going to give him 15? Why would he fall for this nonsense? And so then when he gets knocked off for the 15, it's a total of 2 keys here, 15 keys there. There is no way in hell the federal government is going to give a sentence reduction to the largest African-American drug trafficker because some guy got knocked off with 2 rat-ass keys over here and 15 rat-ass keys over there.
Now go get your fucking
Go home
shine
and get
box.
your fucking shine box.
That's just not happening.
Yeah, that's not major weight. And people, you know, I'm not downplaying what Meech was able to accomplish in Atlanta, from Detroit to Atlanta. Like, yes, he was big for the city. I think you said 150 keys a week was what they were moving at their height.
He said, according to the DOJ, it was 100 to 150 keys every 10 days.
Every 10 days. Okay, so every 10 days, 100 to 150 keys. Now that's a lot of product for the average person to think about. But when one of the biggest things that you and I have had, you know, taking issues with, when people talk, everybody that seems to be Mexican is automatically cartel. They just classify them.
We talk about that all the time here, right? Because that's the usual situation. That's how shit works. If you bought a nickelback from a Mexican dude, you go and you tell everybody, yeah, you know, my cartel connect.
On the cartel level, that is peanuts. That is nothing.
They wouldn't do a transaction at 100 keys.
Yeah,
Maybe 100, maybe 150 keys if your cousin's married to somebody, or you know, you have to have.
I'd really like to hear upper echelon's ideas on this conversation.
We're going to go out of their way to throw a little bit of consideration. 150 is not a lot, or you know, maybe 150 keys if your cousin's married to somebody, or you know, you have to have. They're going to go out of their way to throw a little bit of consideration. 150 is not a lot of product, and so what is characterized as large scale is large scale by American standards.
Correct.
Not by the guys that are bringing in 12 to 15 to 20 metric tons every 3 to 4 weeks. They're moving 20,000 units. There was one guy in LA who in 2 months sold more product than BMF did in 13 years. Well, that's high-level trafficking. Meech was a very substantial trafficker for what are essentially smaller markets. Detroit's not a big market. It's a mid-sized market.
Listen, this just proof that he has no dog in the fight. Because while he's actively trying to clear and debunk the third-party cooperation between Meech and the U.S. government, he's also telling you he wasn't the biggest. That's the same argument that the same people come and argue all day long in the chat.
It's nothing. St. Louis? Los Angeles has got 30 times the population. The greater LA area is 30 times bigger than St. Louis.
Yeah. And when we say this, we're not downplaying whatever credit they had in the street. That's not what this is about. Because I understand Cuffy was a guy in the streets and he might have been a player in St. Louis. But folks, there's a reason why the Rams left St. Louis and went to LA. It's a smaller market. You take that big player in a smaller market and you stick him in LA and nobody even talks to him.
They wouldn't even talk to him. They wouldn't even talk to Meech. The guy Meech was talking to, it was at least 2, if not 3 degrees of separation away from an actual cartel guy. You know, the individual that Cuffy was talking about, he calls him a Mexican. My mom's Chihuahua was more of a cartel guy than whoever Cuffy was talking to.
Jesus Christ.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.
Yo, the fucking Chihuahua too. Chihuahua around, get extradited. Don't play no games, boy. Chihuahua get extradited quick.
Like, come on, man. It's just getting silly. Like, once you actually dive into the facts, there's no way in hell the government would have agreed or even contemplated a sentence reduction for someone at Meech's level, who admittedly was a large-scale American trafficker, on the basis of somebody getting knocked off with, 2 keys here, 15 keys there. That's laughable.
Yeah, that's like the twins serving up somebody for 20 keys and them getting a reduction. That wasn't happening. What does Jay tell you all the time? He says, they're not just going to give you a nice, comfortable bed and a nice room to be in and this Club Med that we think about. This is America. This is federal prison. You're going to get what you get.
And I think the really crazy part is it seems like so many people all put Big Meech on a pedestal because he didn't take a deal. He took the 30 years, at least at the time. Like we've explained, some years have been coming off for different things. But, everybody put him on this pedestal as a stand-up guy. And now he comes out and you have 50 Cent that's putting this whole thing into motion. Now all of a sudden it seems like everybody wants him to be a cooperator or a rat, because these people that talk on these TikTok pages and on these, you and I have shared things back and forth for the last week since that video of ours, done fairly well, at least for my channel. And people aren't reading from court documents. People aren't reading from anything factual. They're just saying stuff that doesn't even agree. Like I had so many people say that he got out because of the FSA, the First Step Back, when that's not why he got out. I have so many people say, what about the 5K letter? There was no 5K letter.
Definitely need a reaction video from Jay on this guy. Yeah. On this subject, we had the conversation months and months and months ago when there was just rumors that Meech was coming home. We had these conversations when Southwest T came home. We had these conversations when Meech came home, right? All based off Cuffy. We didn't pay much, we just said it and we kept it moving. And then 50 shined the light on it, right? 50 shined the light on it. He's not a guy that's just not running around with lawyers, don't have a legal team that's behind him telling him, watch his shit. He made $150 million and gave Meech $5 million. $5 million.
Why he was out.
He did get an accelerated release under the FSA.
There it is.
Yeah.
Because he got an additional year knocked off and he received an extended halfay house placement.
See that? Pete on his shit. He ain't letting nothing slide.
But that in no way implies that the guy cooperated. That's just everybody received, all eligible prisoners received that time cut as long as you didn't do something stupid in prison.
And like you said, too, a lot of times.
Here's the thing. $5 million is better than nothing. You're right. And here's my thing to you, Spade 9. If the deal was you get $5 million, don't matter what 50 made. You signed the deal. If the deal was the deal, that's the deal. I don't want to hear complaints about the deal after the fact. I don't want to hear complaints about the deal when you come home from prison. You made a deal. You're not the locks. You can't do the Free the Locks campaign and get out of your deal. It is what it is. So take that $5 million and make it last. Don't buy chains. Don't try to keep up with motherfucking, all the rappers. None of that shit. Hold on to that $5 million. Make that 510. Make that 1020 and go from there. No, if you made a deal, you made a deal. I'll tell you this much. Nobody's going to do an audit on 50 Cent and find that there was some money that he didn't give them that he was supposed to give them. No. Whatever they were entitled to, they got it. How much did Ross give him off the song? Facts. He didn't give him shit. He didn't care about him while he was in jail. He gave Little Meech what he's owed for him playing the role. $5 million don't got nothing to do with Big Meech. Man, from the way they're talking, if you listen to the Little Meech conversation with 50, he knows his father's busted for money. He knows 50 don't owe him shit. You know why? Because he said, man, the old man just trying to get this money with Ross until our next season. Right? Until their next season. So maybe they got a payday coming next season. He didn't say, man, he f***ing with Ross because you didn't pay him the money you owe him. That's not what happened. We got to keep it real on both sides. Pete just texted me. He said to tell you he's friends with Jay Flores. Salutes to Pete. Tell him I said salutes to him. I appreciate his input on the subject, and I enjoy his interviews, man. Salutes. Tell Pete he's always welcome to come chop it up with the people whenever he wants to. We're like the alleyway of cartel content, you know what I'm saying? We the streets on this side. So, you know, whoever's willing to come get on the show and say their piece, I'm with it. So salutes to Pete. Tell Pete I said salutes. That's pocket watching, man. Whatever 50 make is him. Period. You see in that conversation, little Meech didn't say, you didn't pay him his money, so I gotta, Nah, he said, man, till the next season, he gotta do this Ross shit. He think he's Big Meech. I think I'm Rick Ross. Rick Ross think he everybody but William Roberts. Everybody but William Roberts. Took Rick Ross's name, all of that shit. Took his identity, everything. But he want to be Big Meech and Larry Hoover, right? Come on, man.
Times when Meech was definitely what I would consider a big fish for the government. They were going after Atlanta. I'm not downplaying what he was able to accomplish. He was definitely a big fish. But like you stated earlier, you're not going to get a time reduction for giving out someone smaller or even the same or maybe even slightly above. You got to give away the guy that's doing the metric tons deal you were talking about earlier to get a time cut.
And that's what Jay said with all the time about Mayo. What Mayo going to give him? Mayo had to give him a president just to get an extra milk. You know what I'm saying? Because he's the guy.
Yeah. Well, look, it's sound like he's cartel. Well, I actually pulled the papers on it. Suarez got knocked off for a 3-kilo deal. Like he met.
Shout out Shannon, True Story, Cartel Channel, salutes. Is that really true though? I thought snitching down was kind of standard at some levels of the game. Yeah, but when you're at the top with the big boys, where the big boys play, what significantly, if you sold 100 keys every 10 days or whatever, what benefit does it give you to give up a guy that's selling 2 in a month? What kind of credit are they going to give you for that? What's the value of that? Hit the like button if you have yet to do so.
Like he met Meech in jail after a 3-kilo transaction. Like again, Suarez isn't cartel, and he beat that trial. He beat that case at trial. 4 years later, he's under investigation for 1 pound.
Yeah, that guy's not out there getting money. He's scrapping. He's scraping.
Meth. 3 years later, he's under investigation for 1 pound of meth. 3 keys of coke, 1 pound of meth. Come on, man. These guys, look, they're traffickers. They're not cartel level operators. So when Cuffy says Meech was setting up Suarez, the government's not going to give Meech a time cut for a guy got caught with $57,000 in cash. That's absurd.
See, when you break it down and you put those numbers out there, it makes me wonder why people want to put that on him so bad. And I don't know if it's just a love for 50 Cent, because largely whenever that man's had a problem with somebody, the masses have backed 50 for whatever. I don't like Ja Rule, well, I don't like him either. I don't like this person, I don't like him either.
Motherfuckers love motherfuckers that talk their shit and stand on their shit. People love that, right? He didn't make me dislike Ja. Ja's shift in the music made me dislike Ja and enjoy 50's music more at the time. But again, we all know why Ja made that switch. First of all, money. Made a lot of money making that switch. And to get dog off of him. X wasn't having it. X was on that ass talking about, man, this dude trying to be me and shit.
And it seems like that's kind of started to be in the case with Meech. And this is a problem that you and we mentioned last time. And I feel it's fair that we kind of dive deeper into it. Because people are slowly but surely getting the information. The masses that have put out all this BS rhetoric. Messages and voices like ours are being heard little bit by little bit. Once the truth finally comes out, a lot of these people could have a day in court with Meech if he chooses to go that route, because they are really slandering that man's name. They're basically slandering his legacy, and it could hurt him for future endeavors.
Well, look, in the United States, we all have a First Amendment right to speech. However, no one has a right to ignore objectively verifiable facts and then construct a alternative version of events while ignoring objectively verifiable facts and taking those false factual premises and attacking the property of another individual. Now, Meech's reputation
IP
has an intangible value into tens of millions of dollars.
Hmm.
Well, if you are ignoring facts and then creating this version of events that didn't happen to now undermine the commercial value of that property, there's a very good chance he's going to start seeing a lot of people in court. Remember, Meech is still in prison. And what people don't understand, and from reading everything, I can confidently state that what Meech did is he was hooking up Suarez, a small-time trafficker from California, who was an actual Mexican national, obviously not cartel, but a Mexican national, hooking him up with Cuffy.
Shout out IB. It's crazy because the government is always ignoring facts and creating their own versions of events to make cases every day. Not only that, people in the comments. I mean, throughout this whole Flores twin story that I've been doing for the last 2 years, you know, people come in there, make shit up, ignore the objective shit that you can easily Google. When Jay's on one of these shows and I go in the chat, it's just, you can't argue with the people that are just willing to ignore something, all right? And what he's saying is if you ignore objective truths, facts, real facts, not just facts because you said they're facts. If you ignore those facts and you just create your own story and push that shit, well, now you're hurting dude's name. You hurting dude's intellectual property. You hurting dude's opportunity to get money. And you're doing it knowingly and purposefully.
Obviously not cartel, but a Mexican national, hooking him up with Cuffy. And so, and it's reasonable to infer that he was going to get a piece of the action. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, and that's what he was in jail for, was trafficking.
He can't say that today.
Right.
Not that he's going to get prosecuted because it was 13 years ago. He's still technically in federal prison. If he goes on publicly and says, hey, look, I wasn't setting the guy up. I was hooking up a dope deal. The BOP just pulls him right back into custody. They'll give him a 100 series shot, take away all his good time, take away his FSA year off, take away his extended halfway house placement. If he defends himself today, he gets himself back into prison for 2.5 years. Now, next January 27th, he gets released. On the 28th, he can hold a press conference and say, yes, I put together these guys to do a dope deal, and the Bureau can't take back the time.
All right, so I was questioning the other day, why has he not defended himself in this situation, got on a podcast and said, F you, Cuffy, F that Tammy Collins, bitch, fuck all of y'all, you know, this, and this. It's giving reasons. He'd have to cop to things in order to do that. In order to make that a successful chess move, he'd have to cop to things that if he copped to them, he'd get shipped right back to prison. And let me tell you, they're watching, and they're watching the internet and everything. So I take it back. When I saw Meech do the I never fold, I never told, death before dishonor shit, I didn't want to talk, but they, you know, the people I love told me to talk. All that shit, when I heard all of that, I was like, why are you not talking to somebody that makes sense? You know, why are you not having a real conversation about it? Because he knows in order to clear himself, he got to cop to some shit that if he cops to it, you're going right back. And again, I know they're watching. The Alaskan Avenger, all right? The Alaskan Avenger, for those who don't know who the Alaskan Avenger is, he's a dude that hunted down, one day he decided to hunt down chomos and take a hammer to him, all right? He got locked up, and he was recently released. While he was released, he has a YouTube channel and a TikTok, and he was saying some shit about some dude that abused some woman or some kid, and he was basically, you know, inferring for the world to handle their business, right? So I feel the same way a lot. We just don't have free speech in this country. But I feel the same way a lot. Recently, just yesterday, a couple days ago, dude gets shot in a car wash with his 5-year-old daughter unalived. I blame all of them for that. Okay? Father got smoked. Daughter got unalived. The other two dudes, before the police get to them, I believe the streets should eat them. The streets should eat them. It is your responsibility. They took the life of a 5-year-old. The streets should eat them. That's in my mind. That's just what I feel. I'm not inciting nobody to go do it. But Alaskan Avenger says something on the internet. They took his ass right back to jail and gave him a cool-off for a couple of weeks. They gave him a cool-off or for like a week before they let him out. They let him know, look, you riding real close to the line. So Meech would have to cop to something in order to really clear his name and say, I wasn't trying to set dude up. I was trying to get money with dude. you know, according to what's happening over here. At the end, I could watch it all and see what makes more sense to me.
Now, next January 27th, he gets released. On the 28th, he can hold a press conference and say, yes, I put together these.
So there's shit he can't say because he would have to cop to something. So I get that part. He's stifled to a point. And I do see how they were watching the Alaskan Avenger, and if Meech slips up, he could be in trouble.
So between now and the 28th, he just has to just ignore all of this drama. And I have no doubt that if Flenory's as smart as presumably he is, he's probably talking to intellectual property attorneys right now. Because there are a number of individuals that have taken positions that are in complete contradiction of objectively verifiable facts. And that's something that you can't do, not if you have any assets. Now, if you're just some broke dick joker running his mouth, okay, no problem. No one's going to sue you.
Broke dick joker. Watch your mouth, Pete.
No mommy's wait.
Now, if you're just some broke dick joker running his mouth, okay, no problem. No one's going to sue you. But if you have property, or if you have a successful business, or if you have a house, car, boat, assets, well, he's coming. Because if he had my intellectual property attorney, if he had my guy, he'd be taking them for every cent they got.
Or if you produce TV shows with your likeness.
Oh, 50 Cent is different. See, people don't understand, and they underestimate this man. He's very intelligent. Because in the United States, you have to be able to show damages in order to bring a cause of action. Obviously, 50 Cent had nothing to do with this concert getting canceled. I don't believe that for a moment. However, the moment the concert was canceled, if Meech believed 50 Cent had anything to do with that getting canceled, he could sue him. You know, I keep hearing these guys talking on
this is America. I gotta get the dude from Rocky 5. I will sue you. All right, because that's America. All we do is sue in this motherfucker.
Like TikTok, though, 50 Cent is going to burn everything on down. No, he never would. That's torturous interference with the guy's business opportunities. You can spin out a half a dozen cause of actions on doing something like that.
That's it. Torturous interference. Now, I told you guys, 50 could say whatever he wants about, it's the end of the show, right? It could have been the end of the show anyway. The show was probably in decline, right? But if he knows that and he's privy to that information, he could say, I'll shut that shit down. And you're going to believe it. Why? Because that's what it looks like. That's the perception. But it's not the truth.
And so the moment the concert got canceled, what did 50 Cent immediately do? He issued a statement saying, stop calling me. I had nothing to do with that. That was a categorical denial. He disavowed any intent to harm this man financially, and he made it clear by implication, do not imply that my trolling him contributed to him losing money. Because if 50 Cent actually caused him to lose that concert,
he's liable.
He's liable. And so the people that prepared that statement didn't prepare it for the YouTubing community. They didn't prepare it for the viewers. They prepared it for the judge next year in case Flenory prosecutes him. If he files a civil action, now he can come up and say, hold on a second, at the very first practicable moment, he immediately issued a statement with a categorical denial, and he disavowed any intent or implication. Well, those are all elements of a defense. Most people think, 50's just trolling, he did that. No. 50's a man who's worth millions. Presumably his company's worth tens of millions of dollars. He's a very intelligent businessman, and he's being advised by very good lawyers. Other people are ignoring what 50 did, or they don't appreciate the implications of his move, and they're keeping on repeating the same false scenario that's completely divorced from reality and repeatedly slandering Meech. You know, and what's shocking is look, you know, you got a number of podcast hosts. They're doing it on video.
Oh, shit. Is that me? I don't know. I don't know what I'm guilty of, what I'm not fucking guilty of. But what you going to get from me? A bad attitude and a problem. That's it.
A quick survey, probably about 30 minutes, where I was just scrolling. I stopped counting at 20 guys.
Was I on that list, y'all? I might have been on that list. I got to ask them myself. No, mommy's
who
wait.
were completely liable for their actions.
Liable, horrible
who were
word,
completely
liable.
Liable for their actions, for their statements. And that doesn't include that. That doesn't even include the guests.
Right.
So he's going to be able to sue the host, the podcast companies, the guests. Because when you ignore facts, so for instance, what's an example of an objectively verifiable fact? Okay, Ms. Cowens, entered into a cooperation agreement with the DEA. She was a civilian. She wasn't earning any time off of any beef that she was trying to work off. So she's what's technically referred to as an asset who's being compensated. So now the claim is that she entered into a third-party cooperation agreement. Well, in the third-party agreement, the beneficiary is the third party. In this case, Demetrius Flenory, assuming the theory was correct. It couldn't have been correct, however, because from the very inception, she was receiving financial compensation. Well, when a party enters into an agreement and receives compensation under that agreement, it's a first-party agreement. It's not a third-party agreement.
You got paid to do a service. You're an independent contractor at that point.
The claim is that she entered into a third-party cooperation agreement. Well, in the third-party agreement, the beneficiary is the third party. In this case, Demetrius Flenory, assuming the theory was correct. It couldn't have been correct, however, because from the very inception, she was receiving financial compensation. Well, when a party enters into an agreement and receives compensation under that agreement, it's a first-party agreement. It's not a third-party agreement. And the agreement could have never contemplated Meech getting any time cut because she was getting paid from the very first month.
And you can't have both.
You can't have both.
Right. She'd be greedy as fuck. She said, listen, why don't you pay me and give my mans in them a time cut? So right there, 1 and 2, the person paying and the person being paid. That's the first party. That's the situation. There's no third party. No. I pay you to bust motherfuckers for me. Nobody else. There's no other value in that. You can't have both.
And so for her, like, look, she ended up getting a monthly stipend of $3,000 a month. She gets a lump sum payment of $80,000 a month.
Listen, and for those that think that there ain't people like her, I mean, just think of Saul Rodriguez. Saul Rodriguez, infamously known for being, a snaky character in the Surviving El Chapo saga. He made almost $1 million on being a cooperator, just like her, while he was outside, turning over keys, getting more money per kilo than what he would have got had they popped them with them. Had he sold them himself.
She got money for her to move to a new place, so she gets another $24,000 to facilitate her move. And then the DEA even reimbursed her for the cost of a new car. She's 200 G's into this operation. Well, how in the hell are you anybody characterizing an agreement where the woman gets $200,000 as third party?
Yeah, that definitely sounds like some first party action.
And every podcast host and every commentator knows that she got paid. So in order for you to characterize it as a third-party agreement, you are willfully ignoring those facts.
All right, I strictly say it was a first-party agreement. I'll never say third-party anything again, all right? No third-party consent, no third-party, none of that shit. Salutes. I don't even want to go to a fucking party, not the first party, second party, or the third party.
You're going to call it something that it clearly isn't to undermine the commercial value of this guy's intangible asset? Oh, hell, you can't do that.
So that means if anybody is calling that shit third-party consent right now, you're ignoring the fact that she got paid makes it one-party consent. You're ignoring the fact, and you are now liable and infringing on the man's intellectual property and devaluing his name.
In order for you to characterize it as a third-party agreement, you are willfully ignoring those facts. And now you're going to call it something that it clearly isn't to undermine the commercial value of this guy's intangible asset? Oh, hell, you can't do that. Not if you got money.
And Tammy, when she cooperated against Terry White, which was the first, I guess, on-record cooperation that she had, she wasn't even paid for that originally. They wound up giving her, I think, like $45,000 or $55,000 after the fact.
Listen, if what he's saying is true, Meech got every reason to be like, why'd you ever know my name? All you had to do was not know my name for this shit to not go left like this.
Was Mr. Harvey. Then he retired. Then Cromer reaches out and, brokers that deal with her. And that's supposedly, and you might know more specifically, that's where when he's talking to her about what kind of deal they're going to work out, she even says, what about getting Meech a time cut? And he said, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, well, we've already discussed the nature of the agreement. This is another one of the talking points I had. I call this the sequence of events.
Right.
Because she enters into a cooperation agreement with the DEA in 2009 with respect to a gentleman named Terry White.
Right.
Apparently, Mr. White was involved in some criminal activity, and he had used her bank accounts to surface capital, and she cooperated with the authorities. So basically, she's just a civilian, maybe a little bit of a do-gooder, because Agent Harvey testified in one of the hearings where he's like, hey, look, she was a very unusual witness in that she was doing it because she just wanted to do the right thing. Like most people in those circumstances are cooperating for their own self-interest. She didn't do so.
So she never had anybody to help out in prison. She never had anybody that she was cooperating to help get out. Somebody gypped her for some fucking money, got her involved in some shit. She said, all right, I want revenge on this motherfucker. Went after him, got him, and said, I like that shit. I'm like a whole FBI. I think she's like old girl, the other fake FBI agent. I'm gonna put that video out soon. It's on a couple live streams. I'm gonna put that video out soon though. She probably felt like she was an FBI agent at that point. And she's like, you know what? We got dude that I want a revenge for, but y'all throwing checks and shit? Oh, hold on. We keep this moving.
In 2009 resulted in Terry White. She wanted to do the right thing. Like most people in those circumstances are cooperating for their own self-interest. She didn't do so. So that cooperation in 2009 resulted in Terry White getting prosecuted in 2010, getting sentenced in 2011. Well, in June of 2011, the DEA closed her as an informant. Her relationship was officially ended. In July of 2011, a month later, DEA agent Harvey, her handler, retires. So she's closed as an informant in June. Her handler's retired in July. She's got no further contact with the DEA whatsoever. In August, she gets a call out of the blue. This is the contact that she receives from Agent Cromer. This is another one of the objectively verifiable facts people are ignoring, because later on it came to light that Cromer had been paying a woman that he was actually having an affair with. This became the subject of an investigation by the Office of Professional Responsibility. Well, they had to reconstruct the timeline of events. Well, they obtained the phone records.
Now, don't let that get past you. The reason he said this is an objective fact is because dude lost his position for sleeping with a woman that he was handling and actively giving agency money to for doing what she do. That is a fact. That is something set in stone. If you go against that, you're going against the truth.
The Office of Professional. Well, they had to reconstruct the timeline of events. Well, they obtained the phone records. So they had the records closing her as an informant in June, Harvey retiring in July, and then Cromer, calling her out of the blue in August. Well, people are saying she was working at Meech's direction. Well, she would have had to have been the one to have initiated the contact if she was doing it at Meech's behest. Mm-hmm. The fact that the phone records proved that she got called out of the blue by someone she'd never heard of before meant this wasn't coordinated. She's just going about her business. She's at work one day, she gets a call.
All right, so then I was wrong. She didn't just have the tickle to be an FBI agent. She got called by one.
So the guy reaches out there and says, hey, you did a great job working with Harvey a couple of months ago on that other case. We'd like to reopen you up.
He definitely wanted to reopen her up for the first time.
That's when she comes back, according to the transcripts, and says, hey, look, she's saying, I'm not a criminal. I don't have any contacts. And he's like, well, we're not going to use you in that capacity. We're going to use you to facilitate the investigations. See, what most people don't understand is it is common tactics for females who are not involved in criminal activity to be the ones who move the money. That happened numerous times in my case.
Facts, Pelon. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Agent wanted to tickle her. Saw her, saw who she was, saw she was a CI. Said, let me see if I could get her back, get her involved in this. He was scheming from the top. From the top.
Where we were getting product from Vancouver, and we would have the money go from LA up to Vancouver, and it was literally a woman in her mid-50s. 54, 55, 56-year-old Caucasian woman driving a Volkswagen station wagon. Not a Volkswagen, excuse me, a Volvo station wagon.
He's talking about his own operation and how women handled the money.
And so when a highway patrol officer drives by her, he's not looking at her thinking she's transporting product. She's in a Volvo station wagon, she's somebody's grandmother. The cars would be filled with presents. She's driving up to Seattle to see her grandkids in case she did get pulled over. All to cover, we had the hidden compartments in the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's standard operating procedure. And so when Cromer reaches out to her and says, hey, we're targeting Hispanics and we need you to move the money. Well, that's consistent with how the DEA would put together one of those operations, because what the actual Hispanics, the big boys, would be doing, they wouldn't have no Latinos handling that money. They want someone like her. And so they actually used her in several different investigations. But the important point is when he makes this pitch to her, he says, and if we take down anybody big, he says, you'll get a lot of money. And now she says during that first phone call, which was completely out of the blue, which means she hadn't discussed it with Meech. She, during that first phone call, says, well, can I get Demetrius Flenory a time cut?
And that might be the crux of all of it. That she mentioned the man's name and injected his name into some shit that had no business. He had no business in.
The agent says, well, we'll have to see about working on that.
We'll have to see about working that. He knew he couldn't pull that shit. No mommy's weight. He knew he didn't have the authority to do that shit. All right? Not a plan. Not her calling and saying, hey, let me get, She didn't plan nothing. She didn't say, man, let me see if I could call the FBI and get the FBI to give him a time cut. She didn't do none of that shit. He called her.
Get Demetrius Flenory a time cut. Now the DEA agent says, well, we'll have to see about working on that.
Right.
Now that's significant because the DEA agent has no authority to enter into a cooperation agreement where the beneficiary is a prisoner. See, Flenory was in the custody of the Bureau of Prisons in conjunction with an order issued by the judge. The only party that can agree to a third-party agreement on behalf of Meech would be the U.S. Attorney's Office in Detroit. So when she asks the DEA agent in Atlanta, he can't give her a yes or no answer. He had to buy for time. He got off the phone with her. He had to have called the Detroit people and say, hey, are you willing to give this guy Flenory a time cut? We have a prospective cooperator. She expressed an interest in helping, but she wants to get him a reduction. Well, obviously, the U.S. Attorney's Office had to have said no. Mm-hmm. They're not going to give the biggest guy they ever prosecuted a time cut. There was nothing that Gotti could have gotten or nothing that Chapo could have done. Once you're at that level, you're not receiving any consideration.
You get soft pillow, you get soft pillow, extra potato. You think Tammy's in protective custody? Can she go to jail for this even though the case is closed? I don't know that she could go to jail for it. We don't know what she really did. She was a CI amongst other shit, right? But we don't know, she might have just done that. Simply stated his name and asked dude. That right there put it on the record. She's talking to an FBI agent. That right there made it sealed in stone. She asked for this dude to do something. But from what he's saying is the timeline shows that she did not reach out to the FBI. The FBI reached out to her out of the blue. She did not sit around and plan to go to the FBI and she just merely asked him, you think I could get something from Meech? He reached out to her. So that just lets you know that at the time that this phone call is happening, Meech has no clue she's having this phone call. He has no clue she's trying to do this. He has no clue of none of it. And that agent doesn't have the authority to make that shit happen for her anyway. Hit the like button if you have yet to do so.
And so when the DEA agent contacts her back, now we don't know exactly what transpired between the DEA and the U.S. Attorney's Office, but we can infer it was a no because right after that, she enters into the agreement where she gets paid the $200,000. So the fact that she entered into an agreement where she was getting paid meant that her counter proposal,
Didn't work.
government offered her
Right.
an opportunity to make money. She proposed as an alternative compensation scheme a reduction for Meech. He can't commit to that. The next time he talks to her, they enter into the agreement where she starts getting paid cash.
Boom. That was the end of the Meech situation right there. Or should have been. So did this conversation that Al Prophet said he got from a good source yesterday ever happen? A conversation between Keith Cromer in one room with Big Meech on the phone. Also, he just broke it down. She started taking the money. That should be the end of the Big Meech situation in this story.
So obviously he contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office. That got rejected. So then he reached back to her and said, hey, look, the best we can do is pay you. So she took the money.
And let's not forget, too, they're not going to be so willing to throw time. This is a guy that was buying billboards on the side of the road saying BMF, basically flaunting what you're doing in front of the whole damn city. Like, that is a big FU. He was like John Gotti going on Time Magazine saying he's proud to be a gangster. When you do that, yeah, there's a certain bravado that comes with that, but there also is a target that comes with that.
Certainly. And it would have to have been an enormously significant target who was significantly larger than Meech. And Suarez is not the guy.
Yeah.
Because when Meech met Suarez, he was in jail for some 3 rat-ass keys.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.
That is an important factor out there. And I've done a show with our mutual friend, Matt Cox, and really drove that home because everybody wants to say, well, you know, well, he set it up. He got the time cut. He can't. That's what we're trying to say is hypothetically, if he did set it up, if he did say, hey, get me a time cut, Tammy, do whatever you can do. If she gets anything, money or whatever, then that deal is off the table. You can't, like you said, you can't have both.
That's right. No, that's 100% correct. Also, you have to understand, if he was driving it from prison, encouraging her to do so, she would have contacted the DEA.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people are ignoring the fact that the contact was initiated by the authorities. So that
People are ignoring the fact that the contact was issued by the authorities.
so that it wasn't some scheme she hatched with Meech.
And another question that I hear quite a bit is, you know, why would he deal with someone that was doing all that? I'm not going to dive too much into the Terry White situation because I don't want to get off track of what we're going on here. Who knows if Meech knew that she was doing that? I mean, obviously, like you said, if you put it together, I'm sure, facilitated the meet between Cuffy and Suarez for some sort of compensation. He can't say that, not right now, like you said, and who knows if he ever will say it. But odds are, yes, he probably put them two together in some fashion. Now, what do you think, in your opinion, did he know about her dealings with Agent Cromer, if any at all?
I don't think he knew anything. And the one fact that we can infer that from, or the circumstances we can, is because once the documents were made public, with Cuffy's filing implying that she was involved in cooperating, what was her initial reaction? She ran to the prison where Demetrius was being housed at.
Yep.
She wanted to get to him before he heard about it from anybody else. So she tried to explain it away or water it down.
Again, if the internet is trying to get to the truth, everybody should be actually paying attention to this, covering it, and being open to the information that's given right here. Why? Because between Crime and Entertainment and Pete, they're giving concise information. This is not jumbled up. There's no yelling. There's no fucking screaming. There's no, what about this? What about no repeating the shit? You know, you ask somebody a question, somebody gives you an answer. That's the answer. The answer you want ain't the fucking answer. So be prepared to just get the answer from the person, take the information, and run with it. He said the reason, if you look at the timeline of circumstances and information, why he thinks that Meech knew nothing about any of it was that the moment that this information came out, that he was even mentioned in a conversation, she ran to the jail to go visit Meech, to go explain to him what's going on. This is why your name is in this shit.
What was her initial reaction? She ran to the prison where Demetrius was being housed at.
Yep.
She wanted to get to him before he heard about it from anybody else, so she could try to explain it away or water it down.
And then we went over his response to that in our last episode.
That's right. And that's when he comes back with, hey, just keep my name out of this.
Yeah. Not my name off the paperwork. That wasn't what was said.
And it was at that moment he knew he had fucked up.
Now you see now, you done fucked up, you know that, don't you?
Keep my name out of it. Yes.
Because
that wasn't what was said. Keep my name out of it. Yes.
Because she's saying, hey, I introduced Cuffy to Suarez. Meech knows he's right in the middle. And see, and what people don't appreciate is the fact that on August 5th, that transaction occurred. You know, Cuffy, Suarez sent several kilos of cocaine to Cuffy in St. Louis. Well, the product arrived on August 5th. Suarez called Tammy Collins, not because Tammy Collins was going to cooperate or anything. He was looking for Cuffy. She didn't pick up the phone and call the DEA to report the information. It was just bad luck for Cuffy in that the man she's sleeping with happens to be a DEA agent. So when Suarez calls, this guy's hanging out with her at her place. She's making spaghetti. So when she answers the phone, he hears the conversation on her phone. There's not a call from her to the agent. He was present. So she wasn't even trying to get Cuffy busted.
Yeah.
It was just...
So you telling me that this bitch did all of this shit by accident? Huh? She threw Meech's name in it. She got cuff popped with the whole, Suarez is looking for his bread, and she's sitting around with the agent in they drawers walking around the house and shit. Come on, man. That's a spaz if that's the case.
Pure bad luck. The first time Suarez...
Pure bad luck. Pure pendejoism. No mama's...
No mommy's weak.
It was just pure bad luck. The first time Suarez called her, literally, like they were in the car together. Well, it just so happened that she's hanging out with her boyfriend in the car. From the circumstances, it looked like she may have just gotten through blowing him. They're in the car talking. The phone rings. She answers it.
She was topping him off? He read something. He's not just talking out his ass. He's talking from what he read. So he read something that said Tammy was topping.
They're in the car talking. The phone rings. She answers it. It's Suarez. Well, the guy's sitting in the front seat with her. She didn't report him by picking up the phone and calling. The agent heard Suarez talking to her. And then a few weeks later, the agent hears Suarez again talking to her, saying, hey, the truck's up in St. Louis. Where's Cuffy? So now, of course, she is working for the DEA. The agent says, hey, call this guy Cuffy. Boom. Now the agent calls St. Louis. Well, had Agent Cromer not been sleeping with Tammy Collins, none of these guys would have gotten busted.
Yeah. We're not even having this conversation.
So everybody went down over some ass. Son of a bitch. Hit the like button if you have yet to do so.
I mean, I don't know the way things are going with Cuffy. I think he'd have got busted eventually, but we're not having that conversation about this.
That's right. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances where Meech went out of his way to help Cuffy obtain a plug out in Cali.
And again, we want to reference in the documents it's listed that CS2 is the one that sent Cuffy to deal with who he says cartel, but is not even cartel, not in the least. It's an undercover agent. But CS2, we don't know the identity other than the fact that it is a female.
Well, here's the circumstances. After Suarez calls Tammy contacts Cuffy on August 5th. Cuffy gets the coke. He actually obtained the product. A few days later, Suarez is calling Tammy saying, hey, where is this guy? He never paid for the material. He ripped off the connection. So Meech hooks Cuffy up with the guy from Cali. The guy from Cali comes through with the product, drops off the material. Cuffy rips the guy off. She knows that he ripped him off because Suarez is bombarding her saying, hey, what's going on? Tell your buddy Meech The guy's no good. He's not paying. This happens in August. In November, Cuffy calls her again and saying, hey, I need a plug. Well, what does she do? She already knows he ripped off the last guy. She wants nothing to do with this guy. So she calls the DEA agent and says, hey, that guy in St. Louis that ripped off the guy from California, he's looking for a new connect, but I don't want nothing to do with him. So the DEA agent says, okay, well then we'll introduce him to another informant. That's CS2. So now Cuffy comes, meets with Tammy. Tammy introduces CS2 to Cuffy. CS2, the second informant, introduces Cuffy to the undercover DEA agent out of Memphis. So this is another point of confusion where I think I've heard numerous people saying that, well, the Mexican that Meech hooked Cuffy up with set him up. No. The Mexican that Meech introduced to Cuffy is the guy that Cuffy ripped off.
Yeah.
The reason why Cuffy couldn't go back to Meech's Mexican was because he burned the guy. That's why he reached out to Tammy saying, I need a new plug, because he couldn't go back to the other guy.
And that's what we talked about earlier in the
So it was more than one Mexican cartel connects loose.
last episode. If you're looking for a plug, you get one facilitated by Meech possibly. You burn that. Now you're looking for another one. You're now spiraling as a dealer, as a trafficker. You're looking for product. You rob this guy. Now you're looking for the next guy. You're not going through any sort of vetting process. You're not looking into these people as deep as you should, which is, like I said, had it not been this case, it would have been somewhere soon that Cuffy would have gotten arrested. Look, he may have been a high level guy at one time, but at this point in time, when you're just randomly trying to deal with whoever you can, you're spiraling out of control. You're nothing more than the street guy at that point.
Had he not ripped off Suarez, he would not be in prison today.
Yes. I believe that. I believe that 100%.
And so once Tammy wipes her hands clean of this guy by handing him off to CS2, CS2 then introduces him to the undercover agent out of Memphis. And, it's an interesting issue where, and this has happened with a number of guys I've had conversations with, because for some reason, a lot of the African-American traffickers, they consider Mexican Americans to be Mexican. They're not Mexican. I ask them all the time, you're African American. Are you African? No. You're an American of African descent. Well, a Mexican American isn't a Mexican. No cartel guy would ever behave like this. If you're talking to a Mexican American and he tells you he's cartel, it's a cop. If you're talking to some guy about buying 2 rat-ass keys, it's a cop.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.
There are no Sinaloa cartel guys operating in no small market like Memphis. Those are customers of customers. And no one is going to be hooking up anybody, especially someone from a different city you don't know. Why would you assume the guy's just going to give you 2 keys on the strength? I mean, none of this makes any sense. It's clearly not high-level trafficking activity. It's not the kind of thing that they would have given Meech an extra piece of chicken for on Thursday, much less give him a time cut.
I hope this clears up some of this miscommunication because, I do think the coming of age technology with YouTube, podcasts, TikToks, where people can put out news quickly, is a good thing in some respects, but at the same time, it can be detrimental because a lot of people are quick.
And here's the thing. There's no rumor or innuendo involved in what Pete has been talking about. Strictly paperwork and what he knows from the paperwork. Everybody else is throwing around, all kind of what I think is this, what I think is that. Nobody gives a what we think. That paperwork matter.
Put out unbiased opinions and pass them off as facts when they've really not done the correct research. And that's the thing is people will say, obviously this guy didn't do his research. Obviously you didn't either. If you're not understanding what we're saying, you're the one that didn't do the research. You're the one that listened to a TikToker give his opinion. And I think a lot of people have heard these phone calls of Cuffy from prison, and he's saying he got the reports back from this Frank's hearing. Now, and we can kind of close out with this. Wasn't there a situation where Tammy was on the stand and she did say that she was attempting to do this for Meech? Is that what he got, saying that his name was even involved? Because we covered the fact that he reached out to Meech.
These are the transcripts. She makes the statement that during the first call, which was unsolicited, where she got the call out of the blue, she testified that she offered as a counter proposal a circumstance where she would have received compensation in the form of a reduction for Meech.
Right.
And that's where the agent said, look, we'll have to take a look at that.
That's it. Just a simple mention might have ruined this man's whole life. Just a simple mention. Right?
Because he obviously has no authority to bind a prosecutor. He's just a regular cop.
Right. And so that's what he got from the Franks hearing.
Yes, that's all that's available as of now.
So he gets that. He's thinking that Meech is possibly involved. So like he said, he sends him the certified mail, says he never got a response, which why the hell would he? Meech is not going to complicate himself and put himself in the middle of facilitating an outside drug deal. So I don't blame him a bit for that. That doesn't mean he's guilty. That is where people, I think, are getting all this because they don't understand the context because they've never went to the extent of getting the transcripts like you just held up.
Well, yeah, and, also, I think that perhaps they don't understand the implications of what they're saying. People throw around the term third-party cooperation agreement, knowing she got paid. Well, it's a first-party agreement. And it's just unfortunate in that, you can have fun with people and you control them a little bit and you can jerk the guy's chain and you can make funny, cute little memes. But once you start damaging the commercial value of an intangible asset valued in the millions or at least tens of millions, because for Flenory, it's not going to be difficult to establish the value because you could just use 50 cents as numbers. How much did you pay the family? How much did you pay Tammy? How much did your company put up to produce this 3 or 4 seasons of this show? Well, that's the value of Meech's reputation. And so now this may actually turn out to be
He could
Meech's
put an
big
actual
come up.
number. He could actually tally up a number on that shit.
And so now this may actually turn out to be Meech's big come up. Because after he did a couple of concerts, yeah, he could do that. Maybe he could have appeared in 1 or 2 rap videos. He could have done that. He could have done the podcasting tour. But the opportunities to monetize his life experiences are going to be limited because at some point he's going to oversaturate the market. Now, he could go on to speaking engagements, but as far as being able to accumulate a large amount of wealth, that wasn't going to be necessarily in the future. Well, this provides him an opportunity to now come in and put together a massive lawsuit. He can, there could easily be 100 defendants, 200 defendants. You get 100 podcasters that own houses, he may end up with 100 houses out of this whole thing.
And you want to know the ironic thing that I think escapes a lot of people? 50 says, I'm not dealing with him no more. He's a rat. He cooperated. And so now he's working with Tammy to put out this quote unquote documentary or whatever. You're dealing with a documented informant. There is no question 100%
Stop. Listen,
that Tammy put.
That conversation stops at he's dealing with the Flores twins. He's doing business.
Terry White in jail. You're saying that allegedly she was working to put Cuffy, even though she didn't, that she was working to put Cuffy and them in jail for a sentence reduction for Meech. So she's just as bad as what you're accusing Meech to be, but yet you're saying you're working with her. So where's the loyalty there?
There's no loyalty. He's using that as a tool. You shit on me, now we gonna go personal. I didn't give a fuck if the story was true or not. But now that you want to go take pictures with Ricky Rose, I'll amplify this story that's out there, right? I'll amplify this shit. It's already out there.
Like, where is this? No, I don't get that. To me, that's two-faced.
Well, the thing is, I don't believe is going to participate in that documentary by deviating from her previous testimony. You have to understand, the court and the prosecutors relied upon the testimony she provided in defending against Cuffy's wiretap challenge. She cooperated in at least 4 documented different investigations. Well, if she comes in on a documentary and says she lied during the testimony, she's reopening up 4 criminal cases. Well, before she goes on any documentary, the government's going to have a come to Jesus conversation with her. if you deviate from your testimony, because she already said she got a call out of the blue. So that means she wasn't working at Meech's behest, because Meech had no way of knowing that some agent was going to call her out of the blue.
Yes.
He's not a mind reader. If she deviates from that, they're going to take back the $200,000.
And she going straight to jail.
And if they reopen up the criminal cases, they're prosecuting her. Because they're not going to let her play fast and loose with the facts after the judges relied upon the government's assessment of her credibility to deny the wiretap challenges. This is going to reopen up Cuffy's case, get him right back into court. Oh yeah, she'll be smashed. Her lawyers are going to tell her, do not deviate one iota from your testimony. And so we know she's not going to say anything different from what she testified. She's going to say, yeah, I got a call from Cromer. She made a counter proposal. They turned it down.
And Lord help her, like you said, if she does, because that's a whole nother set of problems.
Yeah, huge can of worms. And so with respect to the actual sentence reductions, in case you want to get him out of the way really quick, he received a...
Let's get it, you, what's the word, man? You concise motherfucker, you, salutes.
He received a reduction in 2021 under Amendment 782, which allowed for a 2-level reduction for all drug defendants across the board if you were eligible to receive the reduction and your conduct in prison indicated that you weren't being a jackass. So there were 46,000 people who received sentence reductions under Amendment 782. So nothing out of the extraordinary whatsoever. And then on the last one, which was in 24, he received a 1 category reduction because the Sentencing Commission altered the way they counted criminal history points, which is consistent with what Meech said originally, because back in his original sentencing in 08, he always said he was criminal history category 1. The government persuaded the court to adopt a category 2. 16 years later, the Sentencing Commission said, no, Meech was right. So they took him back to the 1. So he went from 360 to 324 on the first reduction. Then he went from 324 to 292 on the second reduction. And then the final year he got off was under the first step back. So yes, he did technically receive an FSA release, but the 2 sentence modifications he received were under retroactive changes to the guidelines that don't contemplate any cooperation whatsoever.
He is being absolutely silent on that. No, absolutely no cooperation whatsoever is what he picked up.
I hope we shed some clarity on that. Again, we don't really cover too many things back-to-back episodes, but I think there was a lot of questions that was being asked. I felt it was worthy enough to come on and kind of clear up some of those.
Well, we appreciate it over here. Shout out to Crime and Entertainment. We appreciate y'all taking that time. Shout out to Pierre Rausini.
Deeper into exactly why he did get the time cuts, the whole third-party, first-party cooperation and the differences. Clear that up, that if it's documented that she was taking all this stuff, there's no possible way Meech could have benefited from anything. I think, and my assumption, Pete, I don't know where you're standing. I don't even know what weight this holds, but I say Meech is solid and he didn't do anything wrong. As far as getting someone else arrested for him to receive a time.
Yeah, well, look, he wasn't. Well, nobody can read what the guy's in the guy's head. I don't know what he was thinking, but from the record, there's nothing that we can draw an inference that he colluded or confederated with this woman. And so, yeah, I think that, quite frankly, the guy just getting shafted.
And like you said,
and that's from the record. That's not from rumor. That's not from innuendo. That's not from none of that shit. The only thing he has to look at is the record. The record, not personal feelings, none of it.
To earlier, he's limited to how much he can stand on what really happened, because technically, as people seem to not realize, he is still in custody to a certain degree. He is not a free man. So if he does admit to, like what you said earlier, that can get all that erased and he can be thrown back in jail. So he's not going to do that just to satisfy a bunch of YouTubers and TikTokers.
Yeah, he was transferred to the halfway house in October of last year to serve the remaining 16 months of his sentence on community confinement. Then he got transferred to home confinement, but he's still attached to the halfway house. So once a week, he has to report to the halfway house, give him a urinalysis, and put in his request for his approved moves. Which is why, I don't think this concert ever was going to take off. because it never made any sense. Like, I wasn't allowed to even have social media, when I was at the halfway house. Like, how in the hell are they allowing him to go participate in a concert celebrating his legacy? What kind of a legacy? Of a drug dealer? I mean, I'm not criticizing him, the fact is, but it's not the kind of thing that the halfway house isn't going to allow to be publicly celebrated.
Right.
While he's a resident at the halfway house. Now, because he hasn't been violated, obviously someone there, probably his counselor or his case manager, indicated that they weren't going to object. Like, go ahead, do whatever you're going to do. But once they ran that up the flagpole, come on, either the program director at the halfway house or the regional director for the Bureau of Prisons or regional counsel, somebody intervened and said, absolutely not. You're not going to have someone who's still technically a federal prisoner be lauded and celebrated at a concert with a bunch of, celebrities. I mean, that's just not going to, they wouldn't allow me to get a job.
And who knows if he was even going to go. Maybe they cleared him to go. But if he wasn't going to go, they just used him to promote that concert. Concert got shit anyway. Got shit on.
Working at the VA. I mean, that's just not going to, they wouldn't allow me to get a job working at the VA. Because I was at the halfway house. You think they're going to let someone go out, hang out with a bunch of rap stars at a concert? Like, come on, man. It doesn't work like that.
Well, Pete, have we covered it all, my friend?
I believe so.
Well, thank you very much for stopping by this episode of Crime and Entertainment. We'll be back next week for an all-new episode. Pete, it's been a pleasure as always, my friend.
All right. Have a good night.
All right, man. Salutes Crime and Entertainment. Salutes Pete. I appreciate y'all. Listen, my take on this is that Pete opened up my mind, my eyes, my understanding to a lot of things that I didn't know before. It was a concise representation of the paperwork. He left no stone unturned. If there's more questions, then we'll deal with those questions. Maybe in the future we'll get a chance to talk to Pete. Salutes to him. But people, keep an open mind. All right, anybody could put smut on anybody's name. All right, motherfuckers try to do it to me all the time. Just don't allow it. He's in a position, Meech is in a position where his hands are a bit tied. But this is the other side of the coin. And in order to discern the truth, you got to know every side of the story. And that's what we did here today against popular belief. Popular belief means nothing. You can't convict on it.